Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations and let's transform your financial life together. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and super excited about today's show. We have someone coming on, the author of a book that just by the title, I think anybody who's watched this for a while is going to know that I am going to love it. So, Wired for Money. Change the patterns that block you from thriving. So how perfect is that for the Money and You show, where we love to talk about people's relationship with money and how to work on that, improve that, and align that with everything we're doing to try to build our wealth and our financial lives. So, okay. Welcome, Michelle. I'm going to go ahead and do a brief introduction, but I'm really excited to have you on. I feel like you've been around for a long time doing some really interesting things, and I can't wait to tell our audience, kind of about how you got into working with finance, because it didn't start there, and super interesting. So, quick bio. Michelle Masters is an international instructor helping clients create permanent positive change using neuroscience tools and family constellation work to transform how they see themselves and live their lives. Michelle has been a personal development trainer and coach since 1995, and her expertise lies in a unique fusion of neuroscience-based change techniques, family constellation work, and quantum transformation modalities. And she lives in beautiful Sebastopol, California. And so, Michelle, welcome.
Thank
This is
you.
just great. I love the practical side of money, but that's the kind of, that's not it's not the most interesting part. It's what we use. It's the tool to activate certain things. But what I find incredibly fascinating is how our brain, our heart, all of it comes together to really make our decisions for us. And so, can you tell us a little about how, where you started? Because it
Yeah.
wasn't fun.
Yeah. Well, I found this, I didn't know what I wanted to do for a long time. And then somebody suggested I go to this NLP free workshop, and I'll learn anything for free. So, I almost left before it started. There was this enormous room. There were only two people who showed up. I was one of them. The room held like 300 people. There was just two of us. And so they were delaying, hoping anybody else would show up. And so I looked at the brochure and I thought, oh, I can't afford this training. I don't want to get their hopes up. So I was going to leave. And the other person said, please don't go. And within half an hour, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been looking for. Because I always wanted to do something that could actually change things for people. And I had
Right.
briefly considered being a therapist, but that just listening to how things were and not being able to really change anything, I was like, that was way too much like how I grew up. But this, I could feel things, even in just the little parlor tricks they were doing in this free intro, I could feel things actually change, like the feeling about something changed. So I thought, well,
Right.
if they can do that in 15 minutes, what can they actually do? And so I figured there had to be a way. And so, when you really want something, there is a way.
Right.
Um,
For people who don't know what NLP is,
yeah,
can
yeah.
you brief?
Yes, it's the world's worst name. I think National Socialist Party was already taken. So neuro-linguistic programming. It sounds like some kind of mind control stuff that has to do with language. And to be fair, the founders of it did do some of that. They called it creating change, but what it is it actually works with neural pathways, which got clearer and clearer as it went along. because originally they didn't know what they were doing. They were just copying stuff that other people had done that seemed to get changes and trying to find out which were the pieces that actually created the change. And so they actually stumbled onto neuroplasticity and rewiring without really, there wasn't even a name for it. At that point, science said neuroplasticity wasn't possible. We
Right.
couldn't actually rewire. And but I learned it and we were doing it all the time. Like even while I was teaching it, it was still conventional wisdom that neuroplasticity wasn't possible. And then sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s, groundbreaking research came out that said, oh, actually, you can, the brain can be rewired. And so what this does is it actually, because when it comes to any problem, but especially money,
Hmm.
usually the biggest blocks in the way are subconscious.
Yeah.
And almost everyone is trying to change or address their subconscious blocks consciously,
Right.
which is, like if your brain were a building, your subconscious would be the basement. Your conscious mind would be the attic. So if you have old glitchy wiring in the basement and you send a bunch of electricians up to the attic to talk about it, like, okay, but at some point somebody's got to go down in the basement or nothing's getting updated. And so what I
Yeah.
love about this work is it has a way of accessing where the subconscious blocks are stored because it's literally a different part of the brain. And once you've got access there, then if you create neural connections between that and your conscious mind, it is like sort of that matrix thing where they plugged into the back of the head. It's not quite that fast, but it's fast and done well. It's permanent. You can permanently change old blocks about I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough, I have to work hard. You have to work hard, you have to sacrifice all that stuff that's not true, but we live as though it is. When that changes, it is a game changer. It really is.
Right. I love what you're saying, and I can tell you're really good at articulating something that's kind of complex. It's not something that you immediately can grasp if you're not used to thinking this way. But even the idea of wiring, there's
Mhm.
something, I don't know that everybody listening knows
Yeah,
what that means to,
yeah,
change the wiring in your brain. So
yeah.
if you can just explain that a little bit.
Oh, I love to. One of my favorite things. So most of the things we believe about ourselves and the world are in place by age 3 and pretty much all of it by 6. Like our core foundational beliefs are in place really early and it starts even in the womb. And here's how it starts. Because there's no conscious brain running when we're an infant or in the womb. There's really no conscious thought. There's just experience.
Right.
And so, but the brain starts making neural associations. Like up to 3 years old, infants' brains are making, I think it's about 1 million neural connections per second.
Wow.
Like there, yeah, there's not much there. And so it's all getting created in those first few years. And so here's what happens. Like if you're floating around there in the amniotic fluid and your mother or father or both are stressed, there's no thought about it, but there's an experience of I'm here and ooh, this doesn't feel safe. And so that creates an association of because there's nothing else to associate it with. You're not doing anything but existing in the
Right.
womb, right? And so it's this, we start to have these associations with our existence. Oh, it's scary. Ooh, some of it's hard. Oh, some of it's okay. Oh, but this is, maybe it's not safe. Maybe it's too much. Maybe I'm too much. And again, it's not thought, it's just a visceral association. But these form these basic neurological assumptions of
Yeah.
what the world is like. And kids always take everything personally. Their brain, the part of their brain that can imagine something is separate from us, that's mostly in the left hemisphere. It's not doing much more than holding up your hair for the first 7 years, other than language. There's no logic running for kids. And so when we have these experiences, those associations are what our neural nets are formed from. And so, an example I often use, because most people have had this experience, is if there's a restaurant you really like, and then one day you go and you get food poisoning. Now, you may have been
Mhm.
50 times, but after that, anytime you think about that restaurant, like what happens? It's a
Yeah.
visceral kind of, ooh, no,
Yeah.
right?
What happened? Lean cuisine about 30 years ago, and I can't even still look at the lean cuisine boxes.
Yes. It's just automatic. And that is kind of what childhood is like. It's a series of good and, oh my God, I can't ever do that again experiences. If a kid's parent has a meltdown, a 2-year-old asks for something they want, and they're not delicate about it typically, and a parent has a meltdown because they're humans. But for the kid, that is like a really bad clam at a restaurant,
Yeah.
and some part of them goes, "Ooh, let's not do that again." Like it's kind of so
Yeah.
after that, especially if it was bad enough, it's on only one trial. It only has to be one time. If it was bad enough, if it's a lower level, but it's happening every day, that's
Yeah.
the other way it gets wired in. So it's maybe a kid's not getting, beaten or anything, but every time they ask for what they want, there's a issue. Like,
Hmm.
again, that becomes part of the neural nets. And if their parents are struggling, they associate, okay, this is how life is. And the kids will always make it be about them. So I better tone it down. I better ask for less. I better, don't rock the boat. Don't be too much. Don't ask for too much. And in a perfect world, when we hit like 18 or 21, that
Hmm.
would all reopen up for, you seem to believe here that you are too much and can't ask for what you want. Would you like to keep these beliefs? But, unlike our phone, our brain's not designed to update itself. And this stuff runs automatically 24 hours a day. It's like CNN. This stuff just runs on a 24-hour loop in the background in our subconscious. And then we wonder why is life so hard? Why am I having to work so hard? Why can't I ask for what I want? Why, if my boss gets upset, do I suddenly feel like a 2-year-old?
Hmm.
And it's these neurological connections that we can also call wiring.
And most of us aren't, we don't learn about this really. So we're not trained at 18 when our thinking mind is able to come in and really give this some additional thought.
Right?
We're not trained to look for it. We
No.
think these feelings, these reactions are just, yeah, they become just beliefs, truth, whatever you want to say, and so we just live by them
Yeah.
and without questioning it. And I think that's one of the biggest, you know, the biggest changes you can make is to become more aware and to understand that, and then start really using that conscious logical brain to reevaluate, some of these things. But when you don't know it's even a thing, how do you know to do that?
Yeah, you will just call it reality,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so whenever I hear somebody say, well, that's not a belief, that's just how things work, I know I'm hearing a core belief.
Yeah.
Because our core
Right.
beliefs, we won't even see as beliefs. We'll just see them as, well, that's just how things work. That's just how business is run. I can't tell you how many times in the 30 years I've been doing this, because I never studied business, how many times I've had people tell me, well, you just can't do business that way. And it's like, but I have.
Yeah, I know we get so locked into some of these beliefs, and everything from excuses we make for ourselves. I mean, I had that experience the other day where there are some very legitimate things that have happened to me in the last few years that have caused me to maybe put off some of the projects I had.
Mm.
But as bring it up to somebody for the 90th time, I'm listening to myself going, yes, these things happened. You made some choices. These were the consequences. But there were options.
Mm.
I mean, that's the interesting thing is, there are still choices. Maybe they were choices to take care of people instead of not focusing on my work, and I'm glad I did it,
Right.
but it was still a choice. And, so you really start to look at what's going on in there. And, so, maybe that was a good choice, but just to be more aware that the next choice, maybe it'll fall into the excuse category that doesn't have as much validity.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially if we have beliefs, and so many of us do, that a loving person takes care of other people first, right?
Ugh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's sure what came from my mom, and yeah, I've always lived by that. And some of it is the right thing to do, and some of it not so much.
some of it's just on autopilot. Yeah. Um,
Right.
and we're the only creatures on the planet who question our right to be here. and our
Mm.
worth. Like trees aren't riddled with anxiety about, oh, am I okay? Am I doing enough? Am I reaching for too much? Am I like too big? Like, this is a very human thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
My cats sure don't have an issue when it's treat time. Whoops, I should be careful. I can't say that word out loud because they're not like conflicted about wanting what they want.
Right.
Yeah, but we are.
And so how did you take this training and your interest in this and start applying it to money so
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. So I was teaching at NLP Marin. That's where I learned. And I was teaching there. And the executive director back in 2006 asked me if I'd be willing to do a 2-day workshop on money. And at the time, that was a little like asking Vladimir Putin to do a 2-day workshop on nonviolent communication. It's like, really, that's who you're going with? Because I had no money. I had no interest in money. I knew nothing about money. But like I was so excited to be asked to do a workshop. I'm like, yeah, put me in, put me in. And then I realized, and they said, okay. And then I thought, oh my God, what have I done? And I thought I better learn about money fast. And then I realized, oh, there's not enough time in the world for me to learn enough about money to have a class ready by the fall. And even if I did, I'd just be regurgitating other people's stuff. So I thought I'm just going to take what I do know, which is how to get changes for people, how to rewire the subconscious blocks and the family and lineage blocks. And I'm just going to apply it all to the context of money and see what happens.
Mm.
And so I spent a summer writing the class, and that fall I did the first one. And we got really good feedback, weeks, months later about all the changes. Incomes had gone up, debt was gone away, this promotion, that new project, all this stuff. And then in 2008, because we started doing it yearly, in 2008, I went to a matrix energetics workshop with Richard Bartlett, the late great Richard Bartlett, and Melissa Joy. And it was a quantum way of working. And I really liked that way of working as well. Because as human beings, we experience ourselves as physical beings in a physical world. So I
Right.
like that the NLP works there. And I incorporated Bert Hellinger's constellation works because as human beings, we're also part of a lineage. And so I wanted something to address those blocks. But we also exist quantumly outside of time and space. We're these eternal beings. And so I loved having tools to work with that part of us as well. And so what I did was rather than take people through those exercises, I added them into the field of the class, the field of consciousness of the class. And it got really fun then because people would register for the workshop and get unexpected money that like before it even started because
Oh,
quantumly there's no
right.
time, there's no past, present, there's no cause effect structure is really loosey goosey. And so every time I teach the class now, I ask people, how many of you have gotten unexpected money since you registered? And it's usually at least a third. And by lunchtime, it's usually about half. We'll say, oh, I just remembered. Yeah, this thing happened and this thing happened.
Can,
So,
can,
yeah.
can I interrupt for
Oh,
1 second
please.
so you can explain what's going on there? Like
Yeah.
people listening are, well, why? Why is
Yeah.
money coming all of a sudden? So just a quick connection between what this quantum
Right.
work and these manifestations, how
Right.
that's happening.
Yeah, because there are so many different levels of us. And so there are levels of us that don't exist, that exist outside of time and space. And so often when people have near death experiences, they will talk about, oh yeah, I was connected to everything and time didn't exist. And any physicist worth their salt will tell you that time, linear time, the way we experience it here as a linear constant, a progression from the past to future is actually not accurate, but it is how we experience it here, but it's inaccurate. Like all things are happening simultaneously. And the same thing is true of distance. It's not just time. We experience some things as close and some things as far, but quantumly everything is connected and there is no distance. And mystics have been saying this for a long time. And one of my favorite quotes is from Black Elk, and I even have that in the book. He was a native elder, and he talked about the center of the universe, and he said the center of the universe is really everywhere. It's inside of us. So there are, and this is for some people like, yeah, finally we're talking about it. For other people like, what the,
Yeah.
you know? And I understand both, but we do exist outside of time and space, and we don't experience. We think we experience what we experience is real, but none of us are experiencing the same real,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
I had one guy tell me, look, I know what's coming in the future and it's not good. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Because he was assuming there's one future coming for all of us. There's no one present here for all of us. There's no one past for all of us. Like, we all have different experiences. And so our brain filters what we experience. So we don't experience things as they are. We experience a filtered version. Back in the old days, it was called the reticular activating system. Now they call it confirmation bias. But
Okay.
we see what we expect to see, basically. We
Right.
experience mostly what we expect, and what our brain uses as our beliefs. So so reality is not the firm thing we think it is. There's not like necessarily an objective out there. And so one of the things they have noticed quantumly is in experiments, if you have two atoms that are entangled, they're somehow connected,
Mhm.
and they're on opposite ends of the galaxy, and you change the rotation of one, the other one automatically shifts its rotation instantaneously, like no time. And so when we step into what I did was I added these, it's hard to say, I added these understandings and some of my abilities to work in that realm into the field, the conscious field of the class. So when you register, you make an agreement that, okay, I am entering this field, like I consent to this field. And then the field of the class works on your behalf, and it's a field of consciousness. And all classes have a field of consciousness. Sometimes
Right.
people are aware of them, sometimes they aren't, but they all have them. And so I added in some of these quantum and some of my quantum understandings about, change doesn't necessarily have to be hard, doesn't have to take a long time. In fact, if you do a quantum change properly, the person won't even notice something has changed, because now it's always just been this way, is the
Mm.
experience.
Mhm.
So I know that's a little out there for some people. And those people usually are annoyed to discover that, yes, they did make more money since they signed up.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
happens, yeah. Did I
Yeah.
answer your question?
You did. It's such a deep conversation, and there's so much to it. And so I think for people listening who are, just a little more curious than they were, there's tremendous work out there, to learn more about it. And um, but I'm curious, is some of this introduced in your book at all, or
Um,
um,
I had a chapter when my originally book self-published a book called Money Magic, and I wrote a chapter for it called The Way Way Woo Woo, about this stuff. And then as I was looking at the first book, I thought, you know what? I'm going to leave that chapter out, because I think that might be a bit much. It might leave a few too many unanswered questions.
Mhm.
And so I mention it in the updated version, Wired for Money, but I don't go into it a ton, because I want to meet most people where they are. So, currently there's a lot of talk about mindset, but most people are trying to change what is basically subconscious thinking through conscious thought. They're trying to consciously change their mindset, which is really the long way around.
Have you ever had a money or career question you really wanted to ask, but didn't know who to go to or just felt uncomfortable even bringing it up? You're not alone. Talking about money can feel intimidating, even scary. And that's exactly what I'm trying to change. That's why I created a free virtual coffee chat, a casual, no pressure 20-minute conversation where you can bring one thing you're wrestling with and we'll talk it through. No judgment, no jargon, no sales pitch, just clarity, ease, and a real answer from someone who gets it. If you've got something on your mind, don't sit in the confusion. Book a spot at limitfreelife.com and let's sip and sort it out. Yeah, that was a great way to say it. And you're right. I think when we first started talking, not you and I, but the world started talking about money mindset as something to think about. We were very much talking about beliefs and thoughts around money. And what you're talking about is, really where those thoughts even come from and those beliefs and where they're stored and how, and the quantum piece is a whole bigger picture of everything, and so there's a lot more to it than just, trying to reframe thoughts. But that those things they're an assist for sure. They help you get there. So I don't like to dismiss it at all. But there's more to the picture
Yeah.
that you're describing.
Like if you're doing an affirmation, that's not a bad thing. The thing
Right.
is, if you repeat an affirmation, you have to repeat. First off, we never do an affirmation about something we already believe. So it's something we don't
Nope.
believe. And you have to repeat it a lot. And if you repeat an affirmation, you can create a new association. But that doesn't necessarily change the old one that's running. So now you have two things running that are kind of counteracting each other, which is progress, actually.
Right.
But
Right.
if you have a ton of old stuff that's running 24 hours a day, like the affirmations can only do so much. But
Right.
like software, if you access that stuff that's running 24 hours a day and you change that and something life affirming is running
Mhm.
24 hours a day, oh my gosh, it feels like the heavens just open up and on all everything the things you want just start showing up without you having to try.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of
Yeah.
this, and I know people hear that and are like, "Oh, yeah, sure." Um, and I maybe I was one of those people, but I believe it now, so strongly. And you have to sort of start using it. You don't have to understand it at the level that you understand it. You
No.
can just use the tools, basically. I mean, so if you were talking to somebody who's just like, I can't like take this on. This is too confusing and complicated. I'm busy. What are a few of just the key tools that you would tell somebody or practices to start developing?
Right. Well, this is why I actually wrote the book because I know there are people who are never going to come to one of my workshops or work with me. And I wanted them to have tools that could actually access the place where the old stuff is stored and rewire that to something that works better and works better automatically. So,
Mhm.
what I did in the book was I took some of the tools that were, real crowd pleasers because they're very effective, but also you don't have to understand how they work for them to work, although I do try to give people context because I just didn't make this up. Not that making stuff up isn't a valid choice, but you know, um, but you don't all you have to do, you don't have to learn how to be a practitioner and work on yourself because trust me, it's not a good idea. When I have stuff up, I go see somebody else. I
Yes,
did it a
yes.
few weeks ago, like, and he helped me find something like, oh, I'm so glad that's not in the way anymore. But
Right.
in these change patterns, what they're designed to do is come at it from different angles, because the brain does not like change. It is designed, this part of the brain, the part of the brain that holds the old patterning, is designed to resist change.
Right.
So there are ways of getting access and creating new neural associations that it will start to regard as survivable and okay.
And it's,
And so because it's that part of your brain is what's going to sustain the change. And so some of them are about getting clear on what you want because most people when you ask them what they want, they won't tell you what they want. They'll tell you like a 10-year process of what they think they have to do to get there.
Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? Yeah, yeah, and I was just discussing with a guest who was financial planner, but just how hard it is for people to even know what they
Yeah.
want. I mean, for all of us, for me too.
Yeah.
Like to get that clarity around what you really want is a whole thing unto itself.
And it's half the magic, quite frankly. If you
Yes.
don't have any beliefs or blocks in the way, getting clear on what you want is often enough to make it show up. Like I've noticed over the years, because I've done a lot of work on myself, so I still have blocks, but a lot fewer. And if there's something I really want and I'm clear I want it and it doesn't show up within like on its own within a week, I get curious about, okay, what's in the way? Because I can't tell you how often, as soon as I get clear, yeah, I want this thing, I get a call, I get a text, I get a, message from somebody, hey, would you like to do this thing that I just decided I wanted to do? So that part does feel like magic. Um, so the getting clear, huge. And then there are some patterns that are in the book are designed to like literally create neural connections from where you are right now, whatever it is that's going on that you don't want. Like lay down neurological train tracks to the experience that you do want and then automate them. It takes like repetition, but it doesn't take 500 repetitions the way it does if you're trying to create a new habit. done this way using these triggers, 15 to 20 repetitions can groove it in.
Yeah.
So there's another pattern that works on old childhood beliefs to revise them and update them, and another one that deals with family lineage stuff. And you were talking about relationship to money. That's a whole chapter
Mm.
about people's subconscious relationship to money. And then there's a big piece on worth as well, because self-worth is a huge block to us having pretty much everything we want, not just money, but relationship, health.
Right. How do you define a relationship with money? Because when I first started talking about that, I thought people don't know what I'm talking about. And so I actually developed a program where it kind of equates it to dating, like, paying attention to it. And,
Yeah.
because people need to be able to understand. I mean, and sometimes, people talk about your relationship with food, your relationship with all kinds of things. What does the relationship with money look like to you?
Well, this is exactly how it started for me. So even before the class, I would get people who come to work on money, and I would hear these particular sentences a lot. I'd hear, "I don't want to have to think about money. I don't want to have to deal with it. I just want it to be there when I need it." And like I started to feel bad for money, because I actually thought, what if you were advertising for a relationship and you said, "I don't want to have to think about you. I don't want to have to deal with you. I just want you to be there when I need you. Send photo." I, who would answer that ad? And then there were people who had this sort of angry adolescent, like, "Where's my money? Why hasn't it shown up?" All, not attractive. And then there were the folks who had the unworthy thing, and it's so heartbreaking. But like, oh, I can't ask for that. That's too much. I can't. No. And then there's one that I discovered I had. It's actually the same root as the unworthy thing, but it shows up differently. And it was this course where I discovered, oh yeah, that's not good. I had this relationship. Here was my relationship to money. I am not interested in money. I am a spiritual person. I am interested in more important things. And like, imagine if you advertise that way. I'm not interested in you. You are base and crass. I am elevated. Send photo. So the that became a real that was part of what I wanted to build the course around, my original money magic course that I was asked to do. That and there's a man named Fritz Perls. He was a psychoanalyst who had this pattern he called perceptual positions, and it was a way of looking at like relationship issues between two people. And I thought, I'm going to take that and apply it to the context of money and see what people are projecting onto money. And the coolest thing, Michelle, is that in the 20 years I've been doing the workshop, I've seen it over and over again that when you get all of the old family stuff and dynamics and lineage and cultural beliefs and all that, when you get all of that cleared out of money, the energy of money always shows up the same, and it shows up as the energy of blessings. And yeah, and who would say to money, who would say to blessings, "I don't want to have to deal with you, I don't want to have to think about you." Who would say to blessings, "I am superior, I am interested in more important," none of it. Or who would say the love of blessings is the root of all evil? Like, none of it makes sense when you strip away all the other stuff, and it is this beautiful energy like the sun, this life-giving, warm, benevolent blessing.
Wow, that's beautiful. I'm not even gonna. I'm just gonna leave that because I like sitting in that for a minute. That was beautifully said. Um, so for the people who are like, well, really, I kind of just need to get my debt paid off and start investing and think about retirement. Like, how does this
Mhm.
help that?
Right. Well, one of the things we help you get clear on, okay, what do you want? Like, if you want to be debt free, you want this amount of money. Okay, great. I don't focus a lot on the how.
Hmm.
Um, because it's the how that we come up with is usually a much longer process than it has to be.
Right.
And there are other people. So what happens is when the blocks are gone, it's like things start to fall into place, and often the right information will show up. Money shows up from out of the blue. I've heard that phrase so many times that I actually did a video about it.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so getting rid of the blocks first, because even if you had the best strategy in the world, but you've got these self-sabotaging blocks,
Yeah.
it's gonna all be for, it's still gonna be a struggle.
Right, right. That's what was so interesting to me when I went from the practical world of finance and accounting, to trying to understand why people, don't do the things that are, but why I didn't do them.
Yeah.
Why I didn't do the things that I already knew,
Yeah.
how to do it. I knew the how, but I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's where my introduction to all of this came from. And it's just fascinating because knowledge is an action. Knowledge is great. I mean, I'm a learner. The Strengths Finders 2.0, learner is my top five. Um, and I love it, but it doesn't necessarily translate into making change.
No.
Yeah.
No. And when you change the stuff that, because our beliefs are actually organizing our reality. And so when you change those beliefs, things get so much easier. And we're so used to thinking we have to do things to make things happen. And, inspired action is always great when you feel this like real inspiration. To me, that's
Yeah.
like the universe saying, here you go, you know. But when we haven't, when we lay down these long processes that involve a lot of effort and slogging through stuff, that's probably most of that unnecessarily hard.
Well, and that goes speaks to the belief that, the harder I work, the better I'll do, or the
Mm.
more money I'll make,
Yeah.
or everything is about hard work, just kill yourself and it's going to pay off at some point. And that's a big belief that I had. I mean, I'm happy that I have a good work ethic, but there's lots of positive things that you could say about that. But it doesn't, again, there's not a direct line between that and money. I mean, I know people are the hardest workers I know, and they're making some of the lowest incomes that
Right.
I know.
If hard work actually resulted in that, mothers, teachers, farm laborers would be the 1%, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
there are so many hardworking, brilliant, smart
Mhm,
people broke. And there are
mhm.
people making a lot of money who aren't working that hard and frankly aren't going to win any intellectual awards. Like it's
Yeah,
really not about the things we think it's about.
right, right. It's also interesting. I mean, and I don't want anybody taking away the idea that you don't still have to take action. You
Yeah.
still have to set up that savings account if you want to be a saver. I mean, there are things you have to do clearly. So sometimes, because I do know people who kind of swing the other way too, and they're just basically like, I'll just say affirmations all day. I'll just believe, 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 but they're not out there doing, and good things are happening, no
Right.
question. They're pretty good manifestors in general, the ones I'm thinking about. But financially, there's a lot that's not set up and not happening for them
Yeah.
because they just haven't done the stuff.
Right.
So, how do you balance those, or how do you think about
Yeah,
that?
well, that's why I think the inspired action is really helpful. Like, once you clear up the beliefs, you're a lot more in the flow of the universe. And, I'll notice I'll get you know what, now is the time to take care of this specific thing. And it's like, okay, let's take care of this specific thing now. And other times it'll be like, I think I should do something with this thing, and I'll get this feeling, not now, not now.
Mhm.
Okay. And then when I get the feeling of, especially if I'm in a good place emotionally, those signals are much. When you're afraid, when you're freaked out, isn't your fear can masquerade as intuition, but when you're in a really calm, centered place and you get these inspired nudges, then I always believe, yeah, those are like angels from heaven, sort of pointing the
Right.
way. Whether you believe in that or not, they are nods from the universe, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but.
It can be tricky though,
Mhm.
because sometimes you do, "Oh, it's a sign I shouldn't do this," and
Yeah,
maybe it's not. So sometimes you have to wrestle around with
yeah.
whether that's
But
what it is.
but the other good thing to know is once you have a belief that no matter what, you'll still be okay. You can still create what you want. It
Mhm.
takes the wattage down on the, oh, I have to do the right thing. I have to figure out the right thing. The analogy I use, because there's so much. There's nobody knows how much money there is in the world because it's basically at this point a hallucination of value. It's not based in any precious metals anymore, and there's no limits on value. And so it's a little like if you're thirsty and you're standing hip deep in a river with a cup and you spill your cup, you don't have to stand there and mourn, like even if we do something that didn't work out, there's an infinite number of ways life can still work out for us and that money can come to us. And so, yeah, I do believe in action, but I also want people to not be so afraid. It's the fear that causes the hoarding and the
Mhm.
destructive behaviors, the fear of not having enough, and greed, which is fear of not having enough control or power or resources.
Right.
So the more that fear comes down, the more it lets us create from our hearts, which is honestly, I think, the best place to create anyway, because
Right.
you're
Well,
creating.
that's the center of creation, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah.
Um, and I totally agree with you. I do think there's fear that keeps us from doing certain things that we should do. You know, if you're watching somebody invest and it's looking, pretty lucrative and you want to, but you will not make a decision because you don't know who to invest with or
Mhm.
how to do it and all of that.
Yeah,
I think all of that is a very interesting little journey to go on in your own mind,
yeah,
and so it's
yeah.
to be able to unpack what's going on there a little bit.
Because that's all sourced from here. This old part of the brain, it's often called the reptile brain, and it has
Mm,
three responses to potential danger. There's fight, flight, and freeze.
right.
And freeze is what the brain does when it can't figure out whether or not to fight or flee. And so that happens a lot for people in financial decisions, is they feel paralyzed because this part is afraid.
Right, and, that's so interesting just to know that. I think just that awareness because how many of us has something where, setting up that trust or whatever it was, and not many of us are gonna be super inspired. I mean, well, we could be inspired by something tragic that we see out there where there's no trust, and then we're inspired. But in some ways, there are some relatively tedious, kind of mundane things that we need to do
Mhm.
just to set up the foundation, so that we can have the financial freedom or whatever that we want. But I think, that avoidance, that inaction is I mean, I brought up the trust because I can't tell you how many people I know who are like, "Yeah, I've been meaning to do that in the year after year after year." It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Um and so, yeah, I think that's really interesting that freeze everybody's heard of fight and flight, but
Mhm.
not everybody knows about the freeze part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
And that one gets wired in really early for kids because kids typically can't run away when they're really little and they can't fight their way out either. And so they learn, especially the more life threatening it feels, the more the tendency is to like freeze, don't move, don't breathe, don't, yeah,
Yeah. Do nothing to be
do
safe.
nothing. It's very primal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, I really do want people to know about what's in the book and how it can help them. So, do you want to just summarize
Sure.
that?
Yeah, it's there's stories in there because first off, I love a story, and I didn't want this to feel like homework. And
Yeah.
stories are really good ways to initiate change. And then there's a series of different kinds of exercises you can go through to change, to discover what's in your way, and to change those patterns right at the neurological level into something that works better to automatically propel you more towards what you want. And
Mm,
so I put about as much in, you know, marketers always want you to put in more stuff, more value. But I have learned over the years there's only so much change people will do. And so I tried to find a balance between what felt readable and absorbable
mhm.
and the maximum amount of change that could be there. So it's a kind of a resource for people that can go back, this, and that's what I wanted. And that's what I hear from people about my first book is they're like, yeah, whenever stuff comes up, I go back and I do the exercises. And it's like, oh,
Right.
thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's a great resource to have. I mean, I have some of those too, where I mean, Louise Hay is a great example. I go back to her stuff all the time. Um, not about money,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
well, sometimes about money actually, now that I think about it. But yes, I love that. And I think the stories are what inspire action,
Yeah.
actually. So I think I want to go back to what you said about expectation
Uh-huh.
and the importance of that. And
Oh, yeah.
because that can be a challenging one. I work on that a lot because I know the value of it.
Hmm.
Uh, but for somebody who really has these deep-seated beliefs, who really doesn't expect money to come, into
Hmm.
their lives in the way they hoped, Um, how do you have expectation when you kind of don't have expectation?
Well, that's what the one of the change patterns is specifically for that, for like those things that we picked up in childhood, because like I had a parent who was a chronic worrier, which is
Hmm.
an expectation that bad things will happen,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so quite often if that still comes up, I'll go back and there's an exercise to take you back to when that began, and it's usually really early. And
Hmm.
then that has a series of resources to create neural nets from the place of that kind of freaked out kid who's like, oh, better be careful, don't reach too much, or be careful, careful, careful. To rewire that to let those younger, because we don't change ages, we actually collect them. So like, even if you're 50, you're also 16 and 4 and 3 months old, and there's a whole conglomeration in there. And the 50-year-old may know something, but if the 2-year-old is freaked out, that freak
Yeah.
out's running 24 hours a day of, oh my God, bad things will happen. Or from in 3 to 5, that if I do this, bad things will happen. It's a classic 3 to 5-year-old belief. If I do this, bad things will happen. Or if I do this, I can keep bad things from happening. And so being
Mhm.
able to kind of go back to when that got started and get the person associated in the feeling of it at like 3 or 4 years old, because that's how you get
Right.
access to the brain, is getting into kind of the memory as best you can.
Mm.
When you imagine you're in your body at that age, you light up the part of the brain that's holding the old patterning. And then through like stepping into different spots, it's all kind of laid out in this grid. It happens fast enough that the what the adult you knows and what that younger you is experiencing, they get fused,
Mm.
neurologically fused. And so that is actually the brain updating. So yeah, and the longer we're probably never going to get there. There's always going to be more beliefs, but I say start with the ones that are most in your way,
Yeah.
because that'll make the most
Yeah.
difference.
And, when I started doing this, I used to have people say, well, when will my mindset be changed? Like, is it going to be 3 months or,
Yeah,
and I mean, at the beginning, I wasn't quite sure how to answer, but as I went along, I'm like, it's a lifelong practice, but you do recognize the ease with which it starts happening in some areas that you've been working on. And then you can, I mean, you feel the change for sure if you
yeah,
continue to practice.
yeah.
Uh, you'll never completely cover everything,
No,
but
no,
but if you just work, you don't have there's no real like completion point. So if you're just working on it, you're working on it.
yeah.
Like, wherever you are, you're still working on it, which I think is most of it to me.
Yeah, I've had people take my workshop 12, 13 times, because every time they're starting in a new place and they clear up
Mm.
more stuff, and mostly, especially the worth piece. I did my online class, and this woman did the piece around worth. And the next week in class, she said, my income went up 500%. After she did the worth piece, and she said, all I was doing was sitting around in my pajamas, and the phone kept ringing with people asking me how they could work with me.
Wow.
Because her old sense of worth had been holding them out,
Yeah.
artificially keeping these people from finding her. And when that
Right.
shifted, it felt like floodgates opened.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
I love that. And the worth piece, pretty obviously that's going to impact your finance, but it's also going to impact your relationships and how you take care of yourself and your health. And I mean, everything
everything.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about these workshops? How are you teaching those? Can people
Oh yeah.
find those?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do in person a couple times a year, different places in the San Francisco Bay Area. This year I did one in Lisbon, as well.
Oh,
I've done them in London. I'm going to Taipei. So I do. I used to go to Australia every year before COVID, but I also have an online version that I do twice a year, which we have like 10 weekly Zoom calls. So there's live
okay.
interaction, because it's not just a bunch of recorded stuff, because people get
Right.
confused and then they just stop.
Right.
So with the live calls, I can answer questions and help people when they feel stuck, so they get
Hmm.
much better results. That's called online money
Wonderful.
magic. Yeah.
So do people go to your website to find those
Yeah,
or?
yeah. You can find the book at wiredformoney.com, or you can find the book and my workshops at wiredformagic.com.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay, we'll put all that in the show notes. And, This has been so fascinating, and I really do admire the way you can talk about this so that people can understand it.
Yeah.
Um, it easy to do.
We never got the
So,
operator's manual for our brain.
yeah, right, exactly. And it's yeah, it's really working all the time. And so having, helping it out or working with it like you would your computer is pretty important. Um, so Michelle, I'll put all the information in your show notes. Anything that you would like to leave people with as kind of a final comment?
Yes. Oh, I was, I'll try and make this quick, but I was doing a workshop once where the people didn't know me, so I had to kind of get a sense of them. And I was asking them what they wanted to start. And this one young man raised his hand and he said, I just want to be the best version of me.
Mm.
And I actually got really choked up. This is 5 minutes in. These are all professional speakers, and I could barely speak because for that moment, I saw him as the universe sees him.
Yes.
And I looked at him and I said, Buddy, box ticked, you know? You're
Yeah.
already the best version of you. Like, will you change and grow? Yes, of course, but there's no there you have to get to be utterly beautiful and worthy and so precious. Like I was just overwhelmed with the preciousness of him and everyone. And I just want you to know there's no there you have to get to. You know, you're already worthy. You're already precious. The big question is, what would you like?
Mm. Wow, Michelle, that's a beautiful way to wrap up. So thank you. And very profound and very worth giving some thought to. Because that, again, is a shift in how we think about things. So, well, thank you. Thank you for joining me. It was a pleasure, and you're a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And so, again, we have your book, Wired for Money, and I hope people will read it. I really I hope everybody will read it because these are the changes we need in the world. It would help so many people, and then the ripple effect is amazing. So yeah, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for, that long road to get to, where you've gotten to. It sounds fascinating, actually. So, um, yeah, I loved having you on. So,
Thank you,
really
Michelle.
appreciate it.
You were a joy to talk to.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And audience, I hope you got either a lot out of this or even just one nugget that will inspire you to think about this more, look more into it, get the book, Wired for Money. And yeah, and please check Michelle Masters' information, or website, and the courses that she has. I think you can tell from this podcast how, really invested in helping people she is, and the depth of knowledge that she has in this subject matter. So, thank you for being here and your participation, you listening and subscribing and rating the show and reviewing it. That's what allows us to bring wonderful guests like Michelle onto the show. So, if you can keep doing that, that's much appreciated. And please share the show with anybody you know who seems to have blocks, seems to have too much fear, whatever that is. Share the show with them, see what they get out of it. And you can find us on all the podcast platforms as well as the Limit Free Life YouTube channel. And we look forward to seeing you next week.